Greetings. Welcome to another podcast vlog edition of Power Up Nursing. It has been a moment that we've had a non nurse on our podcast, but this guest today was so incredibly inspirational to me personally that I wanted him to take a few minutes to share his story and to give all nurses and all healthcare providers and frontline EMS firefighters, police officers, a perspective on stress recovery that comes from the heart, that comes from an intense struggle himself to recover and not just learn how to recover the life as it was, but to recover life as he dreamed it could be. And so I would like to introduce Derek. Hold on a second. Let me get you on the stage. Derek, please give your last name. I don't want to. It's Clark, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct,
You
Tanya.
didn't put it up on the screen, so I'm like, uh-oh, I don't want to get it wrong. Derek Clark. And one of the best things about Derek is he gets to live in my hometown birth city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that I don't get to visit enough. But I will tell you, Pittsburgh is full of immigrants, of children of steelworker families. Things are changing a bit, but it is a resilient city, a city that came out of literal polluted rubble and rebirthed. And it is a nice analogy for you, Derek. So I'd like you to just go and start with why your life now is about this stress recovery game plan.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me on here, Tanya. I'm very excited to be here. When my cousin Doug's wife, Shelly Lockard, kind of connected us and we had that first conversation, I felt like this was a great platform to be able to share my story and hopefully be able to help some people regain balance in their life. And as you were mentioning about Pittsburgh, I feel like we're living in Florida now. Like we've taken a little bit of your world and brought it up here because we have thunderstorms every afternoon now. It's hot and humid. So if you came back right now, you'd feel like you were just back right in Florida. But yeah, so this whole journey for me started back in December of 2021. I got back into blood donation at the time because my mom, who was a lifelong blood donor, her dementia was starting to get worse and she wasn't able to donate. And so coming out of the pandemic, I was looking for things that I could do and filling that gap for my mom, and the lack of, always the need for blood and the lack of blood donors drove me back into doing that. And I got a high blood pressure reading one day to check in for the donation. And I went and saw my doctor about that and he cleared me of it. And about a year later, it happened again. And I called him again. He's like, come on in, Derek, we'll figure something out. And this time I went in and I had consistent high numbers. That first time I didn't. So kind of perplexed by the situation, he was like, look, your physical's coming up in 3 months. Let's make some small changes. Because I didn't want to go on meds if I didn't have to. He said, no alcohol, and let's really watch what you're eating, because if you're eating low fat, they're going to get taste in there somehow, and that could be salt. So we got to look at that. So I was like, no problem. And he was walking out the door. He said, I'll see you in 3 months. And he put his hand on the door and he's like, but you know what? Something's just not quite sitting right with me. And he's like, your dad had a heart issue a few years ago, which was, well, it was about 2 decades before that, which was he had an aortic valve issue. And even though my sister and I both had echoes after that to make sure there wasn't a congenital issue, he was like, let's repeat the echo. And he's like, I'll call you right before Christmas and I'll probably tell you everything's completely fine. So I was like, great. So I went and got the echo, thinking nothing of it, got a little ding on my phone. And one of the worst things about having all these online options to see all your test results before you talk to someone is when the test result's not what you expect. It basically showed me that my aortic valve was doing nothing. And I had a 2+ regurgitation. And I was like, well, I kind of know what that means. And all of a sudden, I go down this rabbit hole of looking into that. And I kind of got myself settled in on the fact that, what, I'm going to just need a TAVR procedure. I'll be fine. Well, little did I know, I didn't read down lower where it said ascending aorta diameter was 6 centimeters. And I would learn when my follow-up appointment, he said, Derek, the valve's not the issue. This ascending aortic aneurysm, which he called substantial, is the issue. You need open heart surgery, and probably in the very near future. And I was completely floored, as you can imagine. Like, I was healthy. I was running 20+ miles a week, lifting twice a week. taking care of myself as I thought I was at that time. Being in that place.
I'm going to stop you for just a minute, Derek, because so many of the people who listen to us are healthcare providers. And I want to stop and say, whoever that doctor was, it is so rare to find a doctor who not only knows the history of the patient and who really reads the history, but also remembers it and trusts their own intuition enough when they put their hand on that door to stop and say, something ain't sitting right. I want to do more tests. Right there, I just got so upset because that doesn't happen as it used to. You know, it happened more when we had less electronics and data and AI. It happened more when doctors and nurse practitioners looked at their notes and saw the same patients repeatedly before we started to have to save money by getting into multi-practitioner practices. It's just sitting with me in a way that I wanted to underscore it for our listeners and viewers, that it is critical that AI and digital come back to play, not just to store information or to check out trends between patients to predict things, but to actually be the storyteller of a patient's life. I think every time a patient goes into the doctor, he should be like your doctor. And there should be an AI report for the past 10, 20, 30 years of history that's available, summarized, so that that doctor or NP or nurse can put their hand on the door and say, nope, I'm not going to follow protocol here. I'm not going to wait. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but to me, it's so important that we remember the importance of a human being's story and their parents and their grandparents and what they've been through in order to treat and diagnose better today. Super. Thank you for that first story. Okay, so now you're facing surgery as a healthy, fitness, amazing early midlife man. What's going down?
I'm 47 years old at this time, and since you mentioned that, this also gives me an opportunity to actually celebrate him. His name is Dr. Danny Palmieri from the Allegheny Health Network. He was my primary care physician for 5 to 7 years before that. So he knew me, he knew my lifestyle, he knew all my test results before that. So the little blips in the radar is what he picked up on. So just as you mentioned, somebody knowing me and knowing my history, knowing that just didn't sit right with him to just wait. Because if he would have waited those 3 months, we had a lot of wet, heavy snow that year. So I'd have been out shoveling snow, and you know what that would have done to a 6-centimeter ascending aortic aneurysm. That thing would have probably
I just had a friend that had to wait 6 weeks to see the cardiologist and 3 weeks before their appointment on the incorrect amount of medication and blood thinners with no other cardiovascular risk factors, except they had uncontrollable blood pressure during cataract surgery. Had a hemorrhagic stroke followed by brain surgery. And it's once again waiting, and that primary care or whoever was that initial doctor or surgeon not really looking at the story. So thank God, Derek, that did not happen to you. So you're in a surgeon's office
Yep.
on the same day, or how long did it take you?
So I saw Dr. Palmieri, I believe it was the it was the Thursday after that Christmas. So I called the cardiothoracic surgeon that day, and they're like, okay, we're going to give him your report, and then he's going to call you and tell you how quickly he needs to see you. They called me back within about 30 minutes and said, you need to be in Monday morning at 6:45. We need to do a CT angiogram first, and then you need to see him right away afterwards. And I was like, okay, this is real. And I had a good friend from high school who was a cardiologist. And so my sister and I called her and so we got a lot of information before that. So I knew what to expect going in. And so I really expected maybe to be told, hey, you got to go, we're checking you in and you're going to go have surgery. But the CT angiogram showed it at 5.5 centimeters. So I pushed it a couple months, and was able to get kind of things in order from a work standpoint and everything. And they put me on meds, and I had restrictions and all that. But so March 10th of 2023 or 2022, I'm sorry, I had open heart surgery, replaced my aortic root with a prosthetic aortic root. And unfortunately, the aneurysm grew so large, it just destroyed my aortic valve. Like he showed me pictures of my valve leaflets. There were holes in them. They were spread paper thin. And so now I got a mechanical valve for the rest of my life because I chose to go mechanical if it needed to be fixed. So I didn't have to have another surgery at some point in time in my life. Because at that time I was 48 years old at the time of surgery. So if I'm standing around you and you hear something clicking, don't be alarmed. I'm not going to explode. It's just my Onyx aortic heart valve that is doing its job. I think you're on mute, Tanya.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt that quality of storytelling, but that is such a powerful, good fortune story. And I know that there are lots of people listening that don't have those great outcomes, either for themselves or their patients. But I think it's interesting now to shift into what your current passion is. And that is, you're not going around telling people to watch their blood pressure and get their hearts evaluated. You're going around talking about stress recovery. So, how did you flip your valve from that surgery to saying, I want to dedicate my career and this second chance on life to developing a game plan for people to recover from stress? Where's the beginning of that?
So the beginning of that was in my recovery. I decided with all the extra time I had, I was going to retake a couple online courses that I really enjoyed, read a couple books. And one of the courses I took was a strength coach that I love to follow, Joel Jamieson's Recovery to Win. And it was all the recovery process of working out. And that was one of the things I was really passionate about. And I talked to my athletes about a lot, which is the irony of this whole situation. And in there, he talks about a book by Dr. Robert Sapolsky called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that book. And then I watched his presentation on YouTube, which is fantastic. He's so funny, but he's so, his ability to break down.
What's his name again? So I can put it up so people can go, Dr. what?
Robert Sapolsky.
S-A-L?
Sapolsky, I believe.
S-K-Y. And you saying he has a video on YouTube?
He has one of his lectures on Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, his book, which is a great title.
Oh, I've heard of it. I just didn't know who wrote it.
It's fantastic. And in that book, he talked about the stress response. And I was trying to figure out how all these things could have happened to me because they told me my aneurysm was created by genetics, high blood pressure, and bad luck. Well, to me, you take bad luck and throw it out the
right.
Or back to genetics, which I can't do anything about in high blood pressure. But I didn't have high blood pressure consistently. So how could I have developed this level of an aneurysm? So I started diving into all of that. And within probably the first 30 minutes of the presentation and 4 or 5 chapters, I realized what it was. I lived my life as a stressaholic. And that stress created an environment for adaptation to occur. And when you create an environment for adaptation, well, what's going to determine that adaptation? Whether you recover from that stress or not, right? Because stress is vital in life. And I'll tell you in a minute why my redefinition of stress. But I also, the crazy thing was my OCD about this high blood pressure made me dive into how I could have had high blood pressure. So I found a kidney or adrenal gland scan or issue could cause high blood pressure. So I asked my doctor for a kidney and adrenal gland scan, my cardiologist. He agreed. That showed kidney stone. No big deal, right? So 6 months after my open heart surgery, as I'm going through my recovery, I'm doing all this research. And then I go to the urology appointment. The urology appointment showed that my PSA went over 4, but it went kind of up quick. So they're like, probably benign prostate hypertrophy because of everything you're going through. Let's just watch it. I was like, well, why don't we do this? Can we do a biopsy? Because I just had this gut feeling that the way things were going.
No.
And I had a biopsy. Lesion type 6 prostate cancer, diagnosed 6 months after the diagnosis of my aortic aneurysm. At 48 years old, average age of diagnosis of a male prostate cancer is 67. Now, my dad had prostate cancer, so I knew I had the genes. Again, we go back to this, right? This genes, epigenetics and genetics, right? What's flipping on the switches? What's turning off the switches? And so they were like, hey, Gleason 6, research shows we can just watch this and we can treat it for lifestyle stuff and then we can deal with it. Got a second opinion thanks to somebody I was seeing at the time who convinced me that that was something that should be done. Get a second opinion. I didn't want another surgery talk. When they told me we can watch this and deal with it later, I was like, good. Well, I'm glad I did, because he convinced me that it was probably in my best interest to get the surgery, because I was young. I recovered so well from my open heart surgery. And so I decided to do that. And I'm lucky I did, because I had that in May of 2023. And the post-op pathology report showed it actually had progressed to Gleason type 7, which, as you know, it's starting to get closer to the borders of the prostate, where it can pick up, it can break out and say, hey, I want to go take a vacation somewhere else. And so luckily, clean borders, clean margins. And, again, with all this research I was doing this time, I learned that I was a stressaholic. And looking back at my life, any family member, or friend, or former teammate will understand this completely, because I overreacted to things. I overthought everything, held on to negative thoughts, feelings, and emotions far longer than I should have, and let them drive me. I know the word rumination very well, because I'm the king of it. I hated to lose more than I loved to win. So I never got enjoyment out of winning. It was just what was supposed to happen.
And I put up a banner because we know the research shows we have genetic risk, and epigenetics does show us that with positive brain work, meaning working on your stress response, but also lifestyle, that epigenetics demonstrates that you can not just lessen genetic risk, but get rid of it. But we also know in science that stress accelerates genetic risks. And so here we have a story of you that you are stressing, you have this aneurysm, you're stressing about how to recover from it, and then boom, you get struck with another. Sorry, we're getting a delivery.
Yes, no problem. Yeah, absolutely. And that's when I realized that life of a stressaholic created an environment for adaptation over time. I didn't develop both of these conditions in 10 minutes. It happened over decades of me not prioritizing my sleep. And when you look at sleep, and I love looking at all Dr. Matthew Walker's work, right? The guy who wrote the book, Why We Sleep. It's amazing. And, lack of sleep is tied to the development of certain types of cancers, not a direct cause, but it can be a causative factor, and one of them was prostate cancer. And so it all started coming together for me that stress creates the environment for adaptation. It's necessary. We need it in our life, but genetics and recovery determine the adaptation. And that's when I learned I was a hypocrite, because all the things I was teaching and preaching to my athletes about proper recovery, I wasn't doing in my own life.
And so it makes, honestly, I've been a coach, I've been a stressaholic, I've had 4th stage cancer, I've been diagnosed with MS, I've had diabetes, I weighed 340 pounds. Those are all stress responses, right? And I thought you couldn't succeed without being overly conscientious, which for me was just another word for stress. And I believe everything you're saying, because wow, our body adapts with cortisol, which is actually a very risky chemical, a very risky, messenger to the body to tense up, to get ready for the worst. And it doesn't allow the cells to rest, recover, restore, and be healthy. And we know that weakened cells produce everything from cancer to autoimmune disease to depression to hormonal issues. What you're saying is a wake-up call. And I want to stop for a moment, because Power Up Nursing, one of our pillars for nurses is you've got to sleep. And not only have to sleep, you have to sleep the right way. We encourage all nurses to wear rings. We work with Ultra Human to do an Ultra Nurse program. But what it's done is it's changed lives like yours, of nurses who believe you can't be the best nurse unless you're exhausted, because if you're not exhausted, you're not working hard enough. And it's an insane self-narrative that not only destroys our health, but puts the love in our family at risk, and ultimately puts our patients at risk. So talk a little bit more about what you've learned and what you can share in your program about sleep.
What you just said was, you just described me again with the sleep thing. So I call stress, and I came up with this analogy, and Dr. Wayne Dyer says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so everyone always talks about stress being a negative thing, but I call stress a strategic, tactical, or responsive energy system surge. And so if you look at stress that way, strategic are the things we plan for and enjoy,
Can you
right?
say that again? I'm trying to write it down. Stress
Stress,
is a strategic.
strategic, tactical, or responsive energy system surge.
Okay.
So it's an increase in energy production and delivery to meet an increased demand. And that's everything that we're about, right? Is energy. So when you look at strategic, it's the things that we plan for and enjoy. Working out, singing and dancing at a concert, doing those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
Tactical, the original need for the response. If an angry mama bear starts charging us, we need all the energy we can get. A rival tribe comes at us, we need all the energy we can get. But bacteria, viruses, air pollutants, highly processed and sugary foods,
Mm-hmm.
these things produce stress on the tactical side of things. Responsive is the one that we always think about as stress. The negative thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Our bodies are not in danger. We don't need to have more energy to be physically active. We are perceiving something as threatening. And we get that stress response cranked for days, weeks, and years, right? And so when you look at stress that way and then how it affects us, for me, you're right. Tactic number one in my stress recovery game plan used to always be sleep, because it is the foundation of everything. Or as Dr. Matthew Walker says, if it's something we are biologically programmed to do for 1/3 of our lives, it must be essential, or it's the biggest mistake Mother Nature ever made to knock us out for 1/3 of our lives, right? So sleep was essential, but I was discounting my sleep, right? 6 hours is all I needed, 6.5. Then on the weekends, I'd go out with my friends, and we'd be out late. We'd have adult pops. We'd have processed foods. Well, that wrecked my sleep even more. And then the lingering effects for days afterwards, because I earned that, right? I was stressed all week. So I'm going to go out and blow off steam and have fun. And then I wrecked my sleep even more. So you can see how that over decades would just increase. And so with that, I was like, sleep is the foundation of the stress recovery game plan. But then in the last probably 6 months or so, I've changed that to mindset being the foundational tactic, because think about what wrecks your sleep the most.
Yeah, I can talk about last night.
Yeah, it doesn't shut down, or it wakes us up with those 2 a.m., 3 a.m., or 4 a.m. chatters, right? We get up to maybe use the bathroom, or we roll over. We were sleeping great, and then all of a sudden it just goes, and we can't get it to stop. And that wrecks our sleep. And now we're sleeping 3 or 4 hours, and now our stress response is up. And the way I know that's happening with me, I'm one of the rare people, I think, I still, after 3 years, feel my valve. I can hear my valve. So as I'm talking to you right now, if I just go, I know my heartbeat. So when I wake up, I know exactly where I am at from a standpoint. I don't even need to take my heart rate variability half the time anymore, because I know if I'm rested and repaired or not. So the mindset piece puts us in the position to not only get our sleep better, but also to implement the other tactics, or implement small changes in each of the tactics. And that's really what
And mindset helps us understand that you can't eat after 7 o'clock, a big meal, or you can't drink coffee. For me, I can drink coffee until about noon. After that, I have a sensitivity that will wake me up once or twice, that far away. Wow, this is great. I think that people talk about worry and mindset, but really for you to, in your recovery system, and I love the way you have a whole, you don't have a book yet, and I'm encouraging you to do it. You do have a workbook, and you do coaching, and we'll put up your website soon. But this idea of having a game plan. And if you're a coach, and so I hope there's a lot of guys listening right now. There's a lot of women too who are in sports or have children who are in sports. It's about what's your game plan to win on the weekend, right? So what are we doing this week? We're not going to eat. We're not going to eat carbs until the weekend. We're going to go to bed at 8 o'clock, guys. Because you need to get up and have that energy to get through practice and school. I'm speaking as somebody that oversees kids, not as an athlete. But wow, so the idea of putting mindset into that physical preparation that includes sleep and make sure you relax and eat healthy foods is really cool. And how do you do that? How do you do that with your clients? How do you do that? How do you tell people to do that? What does your workbook say to do?
So first off, I'd like to correct you on something you just said. You said you're not an athlete, but you are. We are all athletes in the game of life.
Ooh, ooh. I'm putting that up.
Where
I'm going to put that on my refrigerator.
Where each day is a game. Each year is a season, and our careers are our lifetimes.
Wow. Excellent.
So the game plan came from my life in sports, knowing that, again, if you don't measure something, you can't manage it, right? So the game plan came from looking at what I learned from Joel Jameson about the importance of heart rate variability when working with athletes on recovery, and looking at as everybody is an athlete in the game of life. So as an athletic trainer, we are licensed healthcare providers who traditionally work with athletes, right? But in reality, we can work with anyone who's physically active and help people expose themselves to and recover from mental, emotional, and physical stresses, preparing them for their game day.
For their win.
And you have to have a plan for how you're going to do that. But what's equally important is to have a secondary plan for how you're going to make adjustments depending on how the day unfolds, because no day is ever going to go exactly how you plan for it. You may have a great scouting report. There's a 4 steps in the stress recovery game plan. Determine your daily recovery. Scout out your day so you have an idea of what your stress looks like. Then devise your daily game plan and deploy adjustments. And following those 4 steps, you put yourself in the best possible position to experience success. But guess what? Losses happen in life, right? We don't all get a ribbon anymore, right? This no lose kind of mentality sometimes, right? In life, we don't get that. And it's okay to lose. It's okay to overstress yourselves, especially when working out. Again, why? To produce an environment for adaptation to occur. But what's it come back to? Recovery. And so by following this plan and looking at trends and how those trends change over day and week over week, it doesn't matter if we have a bad day here or there. If we add high levels of stress on top of already heightened levels of stress, okay, we know it's just going to take us longer to recover from, but we can't have a long losing streak or a losing season overall. Where recovery and balance comes into play, because it's all about balance. It's redefine stress so you can regain balance in your life and feel your best while you're living your life, whatever your life is. It's about balance. It's still about, I still love Irish whiskey and craft beer. So I go have those, but I have them differently now. I still enjoy my cheat meals. It's an essential part for enjoying life. I love pizza, pepperoni rolls, gyros, but I make sure I have those at specific times. I manage my blood sugar now because I had a couple paired fasting glucose readings. And when I go back, Tanya, and tell you that I seemed asymptomatic, when I start looking back on the little blips that I would see in my blood work, metabolic health, big thing, underlying cause of the majority of chronic health issues we have in this country is metabolic health, right? All this highly processed sugary
food. We know that one of our Power Up partners is Dr. Philip Ovadia. You need to go check him out and subscribe to what he does, because he's the cardiologist that would love you. Like, he would love you to help him, because he does all his practice now online and coaches, but from a medical perspective. So if you end up with patients with cardiovascular disease, you can work with him in tandem. He's an amazing Ovadia is the person. But I'm getting genuinely excited because, as you know, or maybe you don't know, Power Up Nursing is really helping nurses measure what they can manage. And the first thing is sleep and HRV and stress, body temperature. A myriad of things that a ring manages. And nurses love vitals, and nurses love vital measurements. But everyone should love this. You know, I know people that get 10 hours of sleep, and of that 10 hours of sleep, only 2 or 3 hours of it are restorative sleep. And they don't understand then that their ring tells them that they're only like 60 instead of 90 ready for the day. And then we have to go back and say, but you ate at 9 o'clock. You had pizza at 9 o'clock. Or you may have slept because you had 3 beers or you had NyQuil, but that doesn't give you rest. I am getting super excited. We have limited time. I'm going to have you back.
Awesome.
We're going to talk about lifestyle, but can you do me a favor? How do people get in touch with you?
So the easiest way right now is just through my website, which is stressrecoverygameplan.com. And there's a contact me page on there.
Okay, excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
Stressrecoverygameplan.com. And I do want to, because when you started talking about glucose, most people, they go to the doctor, they don't even get an A1C, they have their blood tested in the office and it's okay. And they go to the time they're 50 and all of a sudden they come back. And I have tons of people in my life that say, because I'm type 2 diabetic, they come back and they say, oh my gosh, I'm pre-diabetic suddenly. No, 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 no. You've been eating crap all your life. However, your system has been able to manage it, but now you're getting older. Your cells are, deconstructing a little bit. And so, for instance, the chronic glucose monitoring system, I tell everybody, use it for a month. If your insurance doesn't cover it, screw it. It's like $70.
Yep.
Use it for a month. Our Ring Ultra Human has an entire platform that will show you what happens when your glucose is too high and when you're not sleeping. So you don't. It's fascinating. So I'm getting really excited about metabolic health being a part of your game plan.
It's my biggest rabbit hole that I've gone down, and that was thanks to two people. It was Jessie and Shosby, the glucose goddess, in her book, The Glucose Revolution, and then Dr. Casey Means and her company Levels, and Dr. Robert Lustig from them. Those are the people that I follow on all things about metabolic health, and that's why I've been wearing a continuous glucose monitor for 2 years now, and I just find it fascinating. That all of the different things that it can do for you and really help you show. And the one thing it can't show is your insulin levels. And I think everybody should be getting a fasting insulin done. Don't worry about your fasting glucose and your A1C until you know what your fasting
and you know how much that costs? If your doctor won't do it or your insurance won't cover it, it's under $20.
And that tells you everything you need to know about your metabolic health, because
Yeah.
your fasting glucose could be 80 and you'd be like, I'm great. But your insulin level to keep you there is now 12, 13. And you're already way down the road of metabolic dysfunction, but your A1C is still okay. Your fasting glucose is still okay, but your cells are not handling glucose very well. They're shutting down, right? You're insulin resistant. You are metabolically healthy.
And
But
there are dozens and dozens of biomarkers that is measured in the blood that a doctor or insurance will not order or cover, that are not expensive, that can tell you at 30 years old, 50 years old, 70 years old, where your risks are, where you need to supplement, what you need to do differently in your lifestyle. It is the age of Aquarius. It is so cool what we can do for longevity. And thank you so much that you were referred to us, because you're exactly the kind of person that our nurses need as a coach, right? I've got to figure out how to get you to one of our events to do an active coaching event. We're going to close down right now. We've talked a lot. I want you to leave. I'm going to let you take the whole screen. I'm going to jump off. I want you to give a message primarily right now to nurses, because that's who we really focus on, but other people listen to us. But let's focus on nurses, give them a message. Don't jump off. I'm going to end the recording because I want to talk to you just a little bit about our next podcast. But go ahead, take us out 30 seconds to a minute, and I'll be back on in just a second.
Okay. Well, thank you all for listening today. I hope you found something kind of inspiring or interesting in the conversation. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for what you do and your passion for your job and how you take care of everybody. You are all the quarterbacks for everybody's recovery. And in my life, with all the health issues that I had, the open heart surgery, the prostate cancer, I had a major postoperative bleeding complication after my prostate surgery. My nurses were the most incredible people who were, like I mentioned, the quarterbacks of my whole recovery process. The doctors called the plays, but it was the nurses who implemented the strategies and made adjustments as needed. And I just want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for everything that you do, and really hope to get you to prioritize yourself like you prioritize the health of your patients, because that's what I didn't do. I was so concerned about how my athletes were recovering and what they were doing. I really wasn't taking care of myself, which is why I call myself kind of a big hypocrite. And so I challenge you all to just put a plan in place for you to be able to have balance in your life. And if you do that, that'll help you keep moving towards better. You don't need big, grandiose changes. Everybody makes those each year. They're called New Year's resolutions, and they don't stick. What you want to do is make small, sustainable changes that you can see leave an impact over time and continue to build on those. So you don't have to completely change your life. Make small, substantial, or small, sustainable changes that will make a big impact. Again, I want to thank you all for what you do and how you go about it, because you are truly inspirational to me and my whole recovery process.